colleagues. So I think it's over to you now, Kevin.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Just to kind of do my declaration of interest and disclosure, I work for the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences unit that you can see in this picture. And we are part of the university. We're part of the School of Clinical Medicine, and we are funded, which what seems to be a comparable to the tri-agencies in Canada. We have a research centre for advancing our knowledge of human cognition. We have no wet labs, but we do have MRI and MEG scanners, and we've just installed a TMS robot. We cover areas such as child development, mental health, ageing and dementia, as well as fundamental cognitive neuroscience. In case you don't know, this is a quick breakdown of Cambridge University, 11,330 postgrads and 12,437 staff employed in supporting roles. We have 31 colleges. We're unusual in the UK of being that, same as Oxford and one part of London. But we have 6 schools, and I am part of the clinical medicine. We started with Data Champions back in 2016, and we now have 93 Data Champions dotted all over the place, as you can see by this list, how we're broken up. But it does change very regularly for the simple answer of different levels of engagement. We're always looking for expansions in the non-STEM environments, but that sometimes can be a little bit harder due to the lack of demand or fund requirements in those fields. These are the categories we're widely categorized over. We actually choose from these categories in the Data Champions website so that people can search for us. But when you go to the individual people's information, you can see a greater level of detail. Things like, for me, it's open access, open science repositories. This is something that Anna was talking about as well, that in the cohort of Data Champions, you do have a wide range of people. You have the people who are PhD students, you have the people who are heads of departments, you have people that are in charge of actual policy in an institution, and you have the people who actually know what they're doing, but not much else. And it's a way of mixing everybody together that I think is the important element. People whose jobs are tied to research management are a large part of the cohort simply because we're in the right place to already know an awful lot of what's going on, data management plans, RDMs. So you do have an awful lot of crossover of people actually already knowing a lot, working with people who know a lot in their own field, but don't necessarily know the way we work for things in Cambridge. But the important thing is we're all volunteers. Apart from the actual team who organises the Data Champions, the Office of Scholarly Communication, this is another part of their job. But all of us are actual Data Champions. Apart from them, are volunteers. We express an interest in joining. We have a, I don't know what the actual word for it. We have a call out every year for Data Champions for new people to join. And we all try and engage with other people in our own areas to try and encourage people to take part. For me, as I said, it's actually connected to my work, but for other people, it is a matter of engaging with a wider community, and because everybody does learn from it. You learn for yourself, you learn for other people around you, and then you share that information. So the basic information is we promote good research data management and support the findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable fair research principles. We all do that anyway in many places, but we're actually helping each other. It's spreading the information around our departments and the university for every connection we have. We all go to different meetings. We go to things within our own colleges or in schools or in departments. But there's an awful lot of crisscrossing across the university for different subcategories. And this is the way we kind of engage. You can see that's my entry on the Data Champions website. And then you can see the picture there is one of the images we use for public engagement to try and reinforce the idea that we're out there to help people. The one big thing you try to get is that we are essentially an additional layer of assistance for everybody in the university on top of what universities, departments, schools and units are providing. This is everything from training courses, webinars, events. These are being hosted anyway. And what it tends to be is that some people are rather hard to engage with. So we are that additional local level that can be everything. That can be putting posters up in a department, in a clinic, in a common room or a kitchen, that other people, you send a pile of leaflets to a department, you don't know what's going to happen to them. By having data champions, you're actually getting that engagement on a local level. And it also applies to split between different funders' expectations for things like data management plans, where you have to do them, and it's a matter of how much you helped. And those people who don't have the requirements, but we want them to do it. This ties in as well to Cambridge University has had a pilot for a rights retention policy. And from the 1st of April, we will be making that an opt-out opportunity for everybody in the university. So the scale of these pilots has actually changed out, and it's going to be engaging people on a very local basis. That will be the one of the larger things we'll be doing in the next few weeks. So our main focus in a way is the university's repository Apollo, but the same things apply to any other repository. That can be your local repository, a preprint archive, or places like the Open Science Framework. So anything that we can help with will help with the university's expectations, but also future development for your own career. And it's, as we put down in these images, it's a matter of people might think they're okay, people might think they're absolutely fine, but then if you actually look at it, they might not be. We've had different experiences across the data champions where you find out there is a wide diversity, even within the same department, of what people's expectations are, what you think people are doing. You might find out that one part of a department is totally compliant with data storage, backing things up, and then you find out there's other people whose full backup is not on a network, but it's on a hard drive balanced on top of a desktop. And it's that sort of thing we want to try and stop and make sure that everybody can work to the same level when that support is there. So why do we do it? We really generally want to help other people. It's very community driven, but there is the element as well for helping our careers. We do have the self-promotion and expansion of skills for ourselves, because some people will only be in the university for a set amount of time. I have been in the CBE for 20 years now, and my career has just changed on, going from effectively library assistant, librarian, and now research governance and information manager, because of the proliferation of open access from UKRI's 2007 mandate. But when you have a PhD student or an early career researcher, they are going to be in the location for a shorter period of time. So for them, it's a lot of opportunity to get a bigger grounding in the sort of things that will be beneficial to them in the future. But I think one of the big things I've noticed is that if you have people who are at that stage, they're actively working on something new, they're actually working on a research project now, and then we can learn from them. By having them tied into what we're doing, we actually all benefit. We do get it communicated to our heads of department that we're taking part, and we do have individual school groups as well to share information. I don't know anything about DNA sequencing for Drosophila or anything about zebrafish, but I know people that do. So if you find one bit of information from one place, you can apply it somewhere else. We do engage through different means internally through the data champions. It is through Teams mainly, mailing lists, but especially our in-person forums. One of the things we have had is we've had additional work with other institutions. We had a metadata workshop with a small number of the data champions with Cambridge University Press and Assessment, working out new university and CEP policy on metadata for a new set of journals that they're working on. And that was basically 5 of the data champions talking with a couple of the people from University Press and Assessment. And then as soon as we had the meeting, that's then the policy set. So it's not necessarily something you think you'll be working on, but it turns out that if you get engaged with somebody's work, then you can actually have a wider experience that you weren't expecting. So this is an example of our bi-monthly forums. This was the one in January, held at the University Press and Assessment Building. We do actually move around all over the university, and I would say this is very important, even if you're only in one department, one school, that you do go to different places. Don't just have to be in one same room all the time. It's amazing how much you can learn from simple things as different presentation equipment, different tables, chairs. You actually learn an extra level of the best ways of engaging with people. So that was January's, and then this one was last week, which unfortunately I missed. That was in a totally different department. But we always have a category of speakers who are data champions. We have had some external people as well. But it's a basic involvement in dealing with people bit by bit. We have a talk, but it's the next step. And this is the bit where I think the most important element comes in. We meet up. You actually meet the people that are doing the work. You can have policy meetings. You have engagement with managers and vice chancellors and things like that through different levels of communications, but meeting up is different. It's not just another meeting. It's not another thing, oh, I've got to spend an extra 2 hours in this webinar or in this meeting I've got to go to. We know people, and we know what they do, and you remember that. Every single thing that we talk about has an example from someone else. Everybody has a case study. Everybody has something they can actually engage with, and it sits in your mind. You know you can call on them and you can go to them for advice. So, for example, George Cronin is one of the more senior library people, and they were talking about deep data mining. And it was just a little castaway comment on something. But then a month later, I had one of my students wanting to do exactly the same thing. I passed on George's details. You can have that area specific knowledge to fields you know that one person has. You don't need to know it yourself. You just need to know other people, and data champions are the perfect way of doing that. That you just know which way you tilt. And if you actually go and physically meet people while you're having your cup of tea, when you're having your lunch, and you can talk about things after a talk, you actually learn more. And I think that is one of the biggest things that you can actually get from being a data champion, is that engagement. You are dealing with different people at different levels of responsibility, but you're getting a much wider breadth of what you'd actually ever come across. It sounds silly, but you do need sometimes to see the other side of things, whether it is a different subject or a different responsibility, or the differences between a new PhD student or a senior researcher, to understand how people see different things. That's kind of where I'm going with that. So my summary is basically that it's providing help for others. It's a consequence of everything you have done in the past and your experiences, but everybody else's as well. And we all learn from that. I think the one thing I've noticed more recently is you learn, and not everybody has the same level of understanding. As I said, I've been working on open access since 2007, but the problem is you can very easily aim too high. You can expect that people know what you know, and you need to talk to other people. As I put, many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. You never think you should be there. You never think you should be engaged. And taking part in Data Champions makes you realize the things you think are normal, that are simple, other people see as very, very out of their experience, and they learn from you just as you learn from them. And I think that's one thing that Data Champions do help with for everybody. Just like to say thank you to Dr. Amon and Dr. Sashi Jones and the people at the Office of Scholarly Communication in Cambridge. I think Data Champions is a thing that's done a lot for me, and I hope it will do a lot for other people as well. So thank you very much. There you go.
took over.
Oh, okay.
So thanks again, Kevin. Do we have any questions from the in-person audience? Not yet. Okay, well, I know we have one, it looks like we have a question. Now, why can't I see? Somebody sent, here's a link, how to become a data champion with the QR code. Okay, so thank you. And you had a question.
Yes, it's not so much a question, but a really strong affirmation and appreciation of the message. That really we're learning from one another, and it shouldn't be rigid rules. I really appreciate that message.
Okay. So if I paraphrase the participants saying that the appreciation that we it's a system of equity. We're learning from each other what we do know, what we don't know, in what direction. Yes, Felicity.
I also appreciated this affirmative message, but the other thing that I took away from it is that it's really a social kind of behavioral space that's created by the Data Champions program. And so I'm always interested in how kind of organizing happens for those social spaces. And so if Kevin would be generous to talk a little bit about how the organizing of that social space happens,
Okay.
And who takes the role of organizing.
Sure. Hey, Kevin, I don't know if you heard that.
Not the end of it, no, unfortunately.
Okay, so I think that Felicity is asking about actually the sort of mechanics of the organization. So who organizes these events and
Basically, the whole Data Champion system is organised by the Office of Scholarly Communication and Research and Data Services. They actually organise the system. They encourage people to join up. They organise our bi-monthly forums. What everybody does is they organise it, but then we also have our individual school groups. So we get together on Teams and actually have a discussion about if there's anything that's more applicable to the individual schools. Although we want to have that crisscross with everything, we also might have something that's a bit more local. So we do that ourselves. We basically were first set up saying, we're going to do school groups now. Here you all are, get together on a Teams call, and then we've organised that since. But it's the emails are ongoing, engagement on Teams are ongoing. So that's everything from saying, here's a funding opportunity, a training opportunity, a webinar, anything like that gets shared out. But an awful lot of things are done because they also ask for people to talk at the forums. So although there's a lot of nudging and that, a lot of it does come from people wanting to have something to say. So if you start with a category and say, who wants to talk about data archiving? It's like, oh, these people would like to do that because they'd like to share what they're talking about, or would like to get other people's opinions on how things could be done differently. So you do need a level of people starting it, but a lot of it does roll on once you get going.
Be precise. Can you the Office of
Scholarly Communication.
Sorry, is the Office of Communication, Research and Data?
Research Data Services, I think.
Research Data Services, okay. And where's Research Data Services located in your organization? I'm a Research Data Management librarian. I'm very interested in where things are located. Like, is the Research Data Services department administratively, where is it housed?
So I missed that last section.
Where is the Research Data Services
located?
housed?
Yeah, they are part of the, well, actually, what do they come under? I think it's the university library. It's kind of, you say university library, but that covers a wide range of things. So as I said, an awful lot of us are connected to library services, research data. It's all kind of very tied in together. But Yes, Office of School Communication is also in charge of the University Repository Scheme system. Apollo also works out on helping with the open access funder requirements and things like that. So they all tie together. Research data services, open Office of Scholarly Communication, they're all together in one group within information services, library services.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felicity. I don't see any other online questions, any in-person questions. I have several. Kevin, I apologize. So I think I was immediately struck by your notion that this is volunteer. But in a setting of a university, depending on what position you have, I mean, nothing's really volunteer. So I presume that you're, in a sense, the boss is supportive of that, and at some level, I presume that you need to itemize what you've done. So I don't know whether it applies to you or not, but let's say somebody who's going towards promotion and tenure, does any aspect of data champions, can that be added to their promotion portfolio? Does it count? Or
yeah, I don't know for more senior researchers, for anyone doing tenure, for example, but in terms of everything, you're totally right. We are volunteers, but we're still reliant on being able to do it. But it is seen as part of continuing professional development. It is part of being part of the wider community. You've got the levels of being involved in things within your school, but within the university itself. And yes, if you're going to be spending time actually going to meetings, I mean, the interesting element of that is I started in 2019, and then obviously 2020 we then went into COVID lockdown, so we were doing it online. And then when we came out of that in 2021, we then did hybrid, so those of us who could come to meetings did, and they're actually moving away from doing hybrid totally. We're going back to just doing physical ones. The one I missed last Thursday was not hybrid, it was in person only. And so if the meeting's in one part of Cambridge and you're a 20-minute walk away, so you walk for 20 minutes, then you're there for 2 hours, then you walk back again, you've lost a certain amount of time you can do your work at home. But I would say this comes under any other sort of professional development, is if you're going to a training course, if you're going to a meeting, how many meetings do we all go to as part of our normal job? It's just an extension of that. And in fact, you could say quite easy with lots of different examples, how are you actually making things better for yourself, but also for your colleagues? My job is tied to helping other people anyway, but I have more answers for more things because of this. Therefore, it is a good use of time.
thank you. So my second question, if others have questions, please, I don't want to dominate. So what I'm interested in is you're obviously helping the community in terms of folks at Cambridge. So do users, let's supposing I'm a professor at Cambridge and I'm interested in sharing my data and I'm coming to you for advice and help because I really don't know how to do it. When I put my portfolio together and I say I've got publication 1 here and publication 2 there, and if I put in that I've shared the data with publication 1, I've shared that data and 3 people have reused that data. Is that counted, or is that how is that dealt with? Well, I'm really getting at incentives. What incentives do users have?
Well, I think it also depends on, because the hope with that, in that context, in my field, for example, in my department rather, would be you would already know what you're supposed to be doing with it. And you should also hopefully have some engagement with how we do it. But I know this doesn't always work, even within my own department. So when we are funded by effectively the UK government, and their expectations are that all papers are available on immediate publication, that through open science deposit, the information should be there for reproducibility, and for, you know, whether that's going to be within the university's deposits, within somewhere like OSF, or if it's with one of the journals themselves when they do actually hold some data. It's those levels of expectation are already there. The interesting thing we're moving on to, especially as I mentioned about other departments, say, that are not part of STEM, is getting people to share the information that they can. Obviously, if they've got third-party data, or in the case of architecture and art, any third-party images that aren't theirs, there's a limit to what you can do. But the idea is that at the very least, we tell people, if you want advice on this thing, here's who you go to. And of course, in my department, it's me. I actually did, I don't know if you're aware of the Keep Calm and Carry On posters that was used in the UK during the war. They're basically posted, it was just basically keep going. But I changed these and actually did little ones. So it's a symbol of a poster that's recognizable for advertising. I did versions for open access. It was things like, is the collaborator going to pay for open access? You know, have you talked to Kevin? Which is a big thing. So the idea of reinforcing the idea of, here's some issues. Is it a good idea to spend £9,000 on an open access, you know, gold open access title? No, it's not. Things like that. It's, you know, it's the idea of that local engagement, so you can actually, people know, I'm not so sure what I want to do with this. I'll go and see Kevin, or I will contact this person, or contact this, go to this web address. So it's a matter of sharing everything, web addresses, locations. The information is normally there. It's how do you get it to people? So the idea would be, we would help them find out what they can and can't do. Because obviously you're right. Some people just go, I've just put it on my own departmental website. Well, it's not actually your data. You put some, you know, it's non-anonymized. What have you done? You know, we don't want people to do that. But then it's getting people to know these things in advance before they make a mistake. And then we can help them to do the right things. But most things I see are based around funder requirements, but which they should know about. And if not, I am there to remind them. And it's the same thing for people who are data champions elsewhere. Being a local face is one of the things which really does help. And if I don't know the answer, I can find someone who does.
Okay, thanks so much. Yes, please. We have a comment.
I have a comment. It's Ruth Penwell from Ottawa Department of Pathology. I find the journals are very helpful. Not sure it came up yet in the discussion, maybe a little later in the meeting, but when you're publishing, you have to have a data availability statement now in a lot of the journals. So I had to scramble. I was putting in meeting minutes because that's where my data actually is coming from. So people can contact me and get the meeting minutes if they need the data for further analysis. And the other thing I wanted to mention that's unique to the University of Ottawa, which I was not aware of. I mean, I've paid out of pocket because, well, I had the money for free access when it first started, 10 years ago. I used to pay for it because it just meant that the data got in the hands of people who needed it. But now I was submitting an article and the University of Ottawa has this agreement with some of the journals, this was Transfusion Medicine, for free access. And so I put my name in, I put the article in, and about 2 weeks later, I got an email back that was approved. I have no idea who approved it, but I find the journal formatting is now prompting you to share data and give access. So I wanted to put that you mentioned out there and really pay attention to it, and maybe more journals can follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And you want to ask a question. If you can just identify yourself for your phone.
I'm Don Wilson with the University of Toronto. I wanted to pick up on a comment you made, a question you made a couple statements ago around incentives for doing this. My sense is within this room, you've got quite a heterogeneous group of people here. Probably, I would guess, maybe half of them have some sort of administrative responsibility for most And then a good number will also be professors of one sort or another whose incentives are for publishing, getting grants, and so on. It strikes me that what we need to be doing is not only working with those who are managing the system to make it more accessible, but also the administrators and their reward system. So, for example, many years ago, when I was getting into research, there was an incentive at promotion and tenure for me sitting in on grant committees because they felt I could give some inside track on how the system works, but they wouldn't if you sat on an ethics committee. But in both cases, each is essential to get the work done. And after a while, there was an enlightenment, and they started giving you credit for sitting in on an ethics committee. Likewise, getting involved in these kinds of activities, there need to be those positive reinforcements. And I think a lot of universities are starting to do that. University College London, I was reviewing somebody's career review for tenure and promotion, and I thought, oh, this is really expansive in how they're looking at this person's career. They would say it's not just publications. And this person had to be very much data structure oriented. So it really helped for that person's career development. So just a comment.
Thank you. Kevin, I don't know whether you wanted to respond to any of those comments or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, totally right. It's another level of engagement that can be taken into consideration when someone's going through promotion. I mean, you mentioned publications there as being an important thing. Well, I don't know about in Canada, but Cambridge University and the Medical Research Council signed up to DORA, where it shouldn't be that you're living off the impact factors of nature and science and you're going on citation limits. One of the, I mentioned the posters, and one of the posters actually did is your worth is not rated, is not based on your publication numbers, DORA says so. But the problem is, especially for PhD students and early career researchers, that's not realistic. You might be inside your little bubble where it's, okay, we're not going to judge you on the basis of you being just in a big title. But as soon as you leave that bubble, you're somewhere else where if you don't have a Nature title, you don't even get in the list of 100 people that are going to be looked at. So I think it's important that you do have that wider remit of being engaged with different people and different things. And also, to be perfectly honest, if you're getting involved with these things, you're getting involved in things like this, which is a lovely opportunity. I was very happy to be asked. But it's just like, it's another, arrow to your bow to actually show that you are engaged in the environment you're working in. And you might get to go along to a different talk, you'll meet other people, and then maybe because of that, you'll end up with better employment opportunities as well.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thanks for those comments and questions. If there's, I don't see any other questions. There's one last question I sort of wanted to ask you, Kevin, because I think we're in a, you sort of indicated you have 93 data champions, where maybe far more embryonic than you are. What do you see as the sort of the main facilitators to going from what we have as probably 3 or 4 towards a much larger number?
I mean, I think the interesting thing is because you're obviously the biomedical side of things, so you're within that, but that doesn't matter. I mean, we've done it across the whole university because just that's the way we have the collegiate system, the way we have our schools. But there's no difference about it being in that. It's a matter of who wants, but who can get involved. We were saying about having permission to do things. We can't all make all the meetings. There's 93 of us, but you might only get 20 people coming along to a forum because other people have got their other work, or some people are working from home a lot now and so wouldn't be able to take part. It's a matter of, you say you want to be involved, doesn't mean you have to be involved every time. So I think there's the range probably to promote that element of it, is that join in, be on a Teams group, be on a mailing list, come along when you can. If you see something that's relevant to you, say so, get involved. I think it's a matter of promoting it for the wider thing. You don't have to say you are going to have to do this much every month like you would do with some other meetings and groups and policy statement, things like that. So I would say you're promoting it as a get involved at some point. Maybe you'll go to every meeting and maybe you'll miss one because it clashes. I think it's just a matter of seeing what people would like to learn and what people would like to get involved. Just ask.
Thank you, Kevin. And so sometimes we have this fear, which may not be appropriate, that we perhaps are less likely to want to ask people to be data champions on specific issues. So for example, in biomedicine, we may be particularly interested in, let's say, genomics. And so we sort of feel, oh, maybe incorrectly, or we won't ask people in humanities or social sciences because they're unlikely to be able to be a data champion in that area. Is that sort of wrong, or because I think you're saying be much more open and broad.
Be broad. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily wrong because you're looking for exact things, but I think what it is you need the exact things, so you'll get a couple of people or somebody volunteering and doing that. But what you'll learn from, if you have someone from the humanities, it's a procedure. In many cases, it doesn't matter what the actual data is, it's how you deal with it. It doesn't, I mean, you do have the difference between human data, animal data, because we have connections with, well, in the past, we've had connections with monkeys. We do children, we do neurosciences, MRIs, MEGs. We have cohort studies, it's psychological data, it's online prolific data gathering. We've got a whole wide range, and that's just our small unit. Now, as I said, I don't know anything about, the animal research, but I don't need to. I know how I organize the things I do. So what it is, you'll always learn from other people, whichever field they are. They won't know exactly how to deal with your particular type of data, but the organizational structure, the ideas, the different point of view is always going to be beneficial. If you have it in a group and you discuss something, if someone's got something of use, they can say it. If they don't, there's nothing to say. So there's nothing lost by engaging as many people as possible, because you never, ever know when someone's got a connection that you don't know about. Even if it's someone you know, but especially if it's someone you don't know, you can't judge people on the fact that they don't work in the same field. You might be amazed at the engagements they had in their previous job, or the job before that, or their hobbies. Is that the weird sort of thing? Oh, I didn't know you were a butterfly expert, or I didn't know that you're married to a doctor. You never know the different points of view. So I would say widen the breadth of asking as much as possible. If they aren't sure why, just say we can all learn from each other. It doesn't have to be, like I said, the forums we have change. So it's data archiving last week. It was a lot more along the ideas of different ways of gathering data the time before that. And that's applicable to any school, any subject area. It's when you go down to minutiae of doing things like, yeah, I don't actually know how to do that, but my ideas will apply to you if you then pass that on to the person. So I would say, yeah, have it as broad as you possibly can, because you never know what you're going to find out.
Okay, Kevin, first of all, thanks for a wonderful talk, and also the question period is really very helpful to us. So thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now I think we're going to take a 30-minute break, and then after that, Jody Edwards is going to come and speak to us. So thank you. Bye-bye. I'll just put us on.